All right, welcome in everybody. Another edition of the College Hoop News podcast. I'm your host, Tony Patelis. We took a long break here, but we're back for March Madness. Glad to be here. Hopefully, we'll be doing a few podcasts from here until the end of the tournament. Tonight, we're just going to, do a couple bracket breakdowns, see what upsets we like, talk about the toughest region, a few bracketology questions for our guest. Jonathon Warriner is with me tonight from makingthemadness.com. You can find him on Twitter if you're not familiar, at Bracketologist3. Jonathon, how are you tonight, my friend?
I'm doing well. The first tournament games are beginning. Fairleigh Dickinson currently leads Prairie View A&M. Quick update. Other than that, doing well. Finished well in the bracket matrix, third place finish. So I'm proud of that. And
yeah, I wanted to ask you, what were your thoughts overall in the bracket? How do you think the committee did? And wanted to ask you about the net a little bit. Do you think that helped this year? Do you think that's headed in the right direction? How do you feel the committee did overall?
Yeah, I think the net definitely helped out. The high majors weren't necessarily hurt too bad by it, but definitely reward some of the mid-major teams. Buffalo, Wofford were both top 20. I think even Nevada was, and they weren't that good this year even, and didn't play a great schedule. So, it definitely rewarded some of the mid-majors, but it didn't punish the high majors, which I believe is a benefit.
Yeah, I think this year was kind of the first year in a while where we didn't really have a humongous snub. I think maybe TCU had a little bit of a gripe, but other than that, did you see any other teams that you thought should have been in and didn't get in, or is it TCU the team that you're looking at too?
Yeah, TCU's the big one for me. That's the only one I missed. I'm fine Belmont getting in. That was my only miss. I would take in personally Arizona State out. They had the quality wins, but they also had 2 quadrant 3 and quadrant 4 losses. Some other teams, that I think people are complaining about, NC State. When you play the worst non-conference schedule, right. You couldn't have played even the MAC or the some other halfway decent conference. Played basically half their schedule against the MEAC, which is by far the worst conference in the sport. They could have played someone else. North Carolina, Greensboro, they were 0-5 in their 3 biggest matchups, lost 3 times to Wofford. If they beat them one time, maybe they could get in. Alabama, Indiana, going through some of the teams. They had good resumes, good wins. But, you lose 15 times, you can't complain about being snubbed.
Yeah, I agree with you. I didn't think NC State belonged with that non-conference schedule they played. Let's look at the 1 seeds real quick, Jonathon. We have Virginia, North Carolina, Duke, and Gonzaga. Is that what you had? What are your thoughts on the 1 seeds? Do you think Tennessee or Michigan State has a gripe? Do you think they belonged on that one line, or how do you think the committee did with the 1 seeds?
I think the committee got the 1 seeds right. I had Saturday night going in Tennessee as a 1 seed over North Carolina at the time. But then, they go out and lose by 20 or something like that to Auburn. Way to leave a good last impression. And then Michigan State, they were never going to get a 1 seed, playing that Big Ten championship game Sunday at 3:30 p.m. Right before the selection show. If you're even on the edge, the committee's never going to reward them for having the Big Ten championship there. So they probably need to not lose that second Indiana game.
Yeah, I've seen a few people say, and I don't know what you think about this, not having games on Sunday, on Selection Sunday. What do you think about that?
If I'm a high major, league, I'm probably moving it towards Saturday. I would like to see the Big Ten or the SEC, even the AC, move it to Saturday. And then you could maybe switch some of those games out with some of the good mid-major leagues that are playing on Saturday. Kind of you get the intrigue on Sunday, games to watch, but it wouldn't punish high major schools kind of like Michigan State playing
Yeah.
right before Selection Sunday.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning that way too. I don't think that there should be games, because maybe if Michigan State plays that game on Saturday, that helps them out quite a bit, winning the Big Ten tournament. I'm not sure. Let's see. But toughest regions, I rank them West, Midwest, South, and then East. I just think the West is the deepest region. You have Gonzaga, who arguably was the best team in the country all year. Michigan's been a top 5-10 team all year, who I think is capable of winning it all. You have Florida State, one of the hottest teams in the country the last few months. Texas Tech won the Big 12. Nevada, although they did kind of underachieve this year, they're still dangerous. You have Buffalo, who's somewhat of a Cinderella, and I didn't even mention teams like Marquette and Syracuse. How do you feel about the toughest region? Do you agree with the West, or are you going another way?
I would go in order, maybe Midwest over the West. Midwest to me is kind of a blow up region. I could see a bunch of scenarios, but the West I do think has again 5 or 6 Final Four contenders.
Right.
So it's either the West or the Midwest. The South and East, it's Duke, Michigan State, Virginia, Tennessee. If those aren't the Elite Eight games, we have some serious upsets on our hands.
Yeah, Duke seems like they got a pretty good draw here. I think they could almost walk to the Elite Eight. They might run into some trouble with an LSU or a Michigan State in the Elite Eight, but I think they got a really good draw. I think it's going to be a pretty easy run for Duke. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think at least until the Elite Eight, they shouldn't lose a game. Maybe Virginia Tech could scare them, but even then, I'm not looking at this region as the region of death, or I think it's easily going to be Duke at least in the Elite Eight and maybe even Final Four, depending on if Michigan State, can really challenge them.
Yeah, Michigan State, if they're just not healthy as they were earlier in the season, so that might be an issue. But LSU, I know that they're dealing with some off the court stuff, but they're still super talented. Javonte Smart looks like he's going to play, so maybe they can make some noise in that bottom of that bracket. But yeah, I agree. I have no issue with people saying the Midwest is the best. I just think the West is a little bit above that. But other than that, yeah, I think that South and the East are definitely on the bottom tier. So let's go through some games real quick. One game I wanted to ask you about in the East, I think, is Mississippi State and Liberty, one of these classic, 5-12 games. Liberty's in a fantastic three-point shooting team, and Mississippi State never really impressed me this year. They're kind of up and down. I never watched Mississippi State and said, wow, this is a really good basketball team. I think size might be an issue for Liberty with this team. You have guys like Perry and Holman. For Mississippi State, they could cause some problems for Liberty. But how are you feeling about that game? And do you think Liberty's maybe can pull this one out?
I definitely think they could pull this one out. All you need is a few shots to go in. Anything can happen in a 40-minute basketball game. Mississippi State, they really haven't impressed me at all this year.
I'm with you.
They've picked up a couple of solid wins, but they didn't beat Tennessee or LSU or Kentucky. And so, if you can't beat those teams, I'd say you could be susceptible for an early exit, maybe at the hands of Liberty.
Yeah, with Liberty, like I said, they shoot the three at 36% as a team. Mississippi State's perimeter defense is really bad. They're 234th in the country. So that's something I was definitely looking at. Level Cabill Jr. is a really talented guard. I think he could cause some problems for the Bulldogs. Scotty James is going to have his hands full, like I said, with that Mississippi State size up front. But I think Liberty is a team that a lot of people are going to pick in this upset. I wouldn't be surprised if more than half the people in these tournament challenges and whatnot pick Liberty to win. Would you agree with that?
I wouldn't quite say half, maybe 60-40, just
okay.
Judging by what people know of Liberty. Liberty and Mississippi State. Usually I tend to see maybe 40, 60 in that instance.
Okay.
But I do think Mississippi State's, definitely the worst five I look at. The other fives all had good regular seasons and picked up quality wins. Mississippi State really didn't do so.
Yeah, they feel more like an 8 seed to me or something like that. They just don't, like I said, they didn't impress me all year. The other game I want to ask you about, I think is pretty intriguing. VCU and Central Florida, kind of one of these first to 50 games. I think both these teams are super talented on defense. I think they're both top. I think they're both top 30 in the country in scoring defense. VCU's perimeter defense is fantastic. I think one issue though is Marcus Evans going to be healthy for this game. That's a pretty big issue for VCU if he's not on the floor. What are you feeling about this one?
Well, it will depend a lot if Marcus Evans is healthy. I'm not buying the VCU saying, oh, it's only like day to day and he's going to be healthy. That looked like it hurt. Right. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not in uniform or if he does play, he's not 100%. In which case, I do like the UCF Knights to advance in this one. I think inside Taco Fall can make a difference. And then this year they kind of have scoring outside, Aubrey Dawkins, BJ Taylor. They can both get you a bucket. So I would take UCF in that matchup.
Yeah, they actually shoot the three pretty well, 35% as a team. Not great, but not bad either. Aubrey Dawkins has been a huge addition, especially with his perimeter shooting. Marco Santos Silva, though, he's been playing really well of late for VCU, so he's definitely going to have to match up with Taco Fall on the inside. I think that's going to be a pretty competitive game. I'm not sure yet who's going to take it. I still got to do a little bit more breakdown, but I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair. Obviously, a lot of defense. What's another game maybe in the East that you're looking at, Jonathan, that intrigued you?
I'm looking at the winner of Belmont Temple.
Right.
I think either against Maryland, I think either of those teams, could beat Maryland. Every year we get the first four winner always picks up a win in the second round or in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Right. I look at Maryland as the kind of like weak 6 seed that is susceptible to that loss. And I think, Belmont, their guards are really well. So Temple's also a really good team. I think either one of those teams, I know people listening to this probably know the winner of this. Either one of those teams, I think has a really good shot to beat Maryland.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Belmont, who I like tonight in that game with Temple, I think they have a pretty good shot to get to the Sweet 16 with the way they're playing right now. I think Dylan Windler is a kid that not a lot of people know about, and he's a fantastic basketball player. Grayson Murphy, the freshman point guard for Belmont, he's playing great. I think Belmont's really hungry. They haven't been to the NCAA tournament in a few years now, I don't think. So hopefully they can maybe make a run in this tournament. I love Rick Byrd, one of the best coaches in the country, so we'll see what happens, but let's move on.
One thing I will add to that, Belmont kind of, as the last mid-major in, they have a lot of pressure on them.
Right.
I think, that could be an extra motivation to like carry mid-majors everywhere, to get more at-large bids in the future. If they perform well, the committee could look at that and say, well, Belmont, they made the Sweet 16 or something like that. Maybe we'll give, the next Belmont a chance.
Right. That's a good point. All right, let's move on here. Let's talk about the West a little bit. One game I wanted to talk to you about is Nevada and Florida. Kind of like two teams going in opposite directions, in my opinion. I think Florida, these last few weeks, have kind of played their way into the NCAA tournament, where Nevada, looked like maybe a 4 or 5 seed a few weeks ago, and then they moved down to a 7. You have the Jordan Caroline injury situation. He's dealing with an Achilles. Nevada just looks somewhat vulnerable to me, where Florida's been playing better basketball, as I said. How do you feel about that matchup, Jonathan?
I will take Florida in the first round. Andrew Nembhard, he's been really good as of late. You got Hudson, Allen. They're playing kind of their best basketball as of late, and the freshmen are kind of coming along as well. And so this definitely Florida team playing their best basketball. And then Nevada, they don't look interested. They keep falling behind in the first half, and then even against mediocre teams, they're not even able to come from behind. If they get down like 10 to Florida, and Florida is a good defensive team, I don't think they can come back and win this game.
Yeah, I think you got to watch the turnover battle in this one too. Both teams are great at creating turnovers. Florida averages 14 a game. Nevada averages 13 a game. So that could be a key. I think I'm going to lean Florida too. I just don't like the way this Nevada team's been playing lately. And again, how hurt is Jordan Caroline? That's going to be a big factor in that one. So the other one, I think everybody's talking about another 5-12 matchup. Obviously in the West is Marquette and Murray State. And it's kind of like the game with VCU and UCF where, Marcus Howard, he looked like he was really struggling with that wrist injury. So if he isn't, healthy, that's obviously going to help out Murray State. But if he goes and he's going okay, I think this is going to be a really interesting matchup. Two fantastic guards. How do you feel about this game?
I mean, a lot does determine on is Marcus Howard healthy. If he's not able to shoot, I definitely think Murray State takes it. Assuming both teams are healthy, this should be a fun matchup.
Yeah.
Both teams, they have the star players, but they also have, Sakar and M. He's a good defender. He can maybe slow down John Morant. Shaq Buchanan on Murray State, maybe could do a little bit to stop Marcus Howard. Both those players, I think, were all league defensive players. That could be something to watch. Maybe both those players don't have as grave games as we would think. But, I mean, looking at it, it's a toss-up game. I think it could go either way. So.
Yeah, I think the Hauser brothers are going to be a pretty big issue for Murray State defensively. I think they can cause a lot of problems. And I think the one thing to look at is three-point shooting. Murray State is top 5 in the country in three-point shooting defense, and Marquette is top 10 in the country in three-point shooting offense. So that's something, if they can keep Marquette off that three-point line, they're going to have a much better chance to win. What's a game maybe in the West that you're looking at as well, Jonathan? Any other games that intrigue you?
I like the Syracuse-Baylor matchup. Matchup of
that a little bit.
Two zones. We'll have to see kind of the health of Tyus Battle and Makai Mason. I assume both should be at least playing in this matchup because it's the NCAA tournament. You have to play. We'll see how well they're able to play. But it should be fascinating to watch how kind of both defenses and both offenses adjust to playing a zone. And zone versus zone matchup is always fun.
Yeah, I know, and I Syracuse is one of those teams that always gives teams trouble in the NCAA tournament because of that zone. Just hard to prepare for in such little time. So I'm interested to see if maybe Baylor or Syracuse, who comes out of that game, can give Gonzaga a little bit of trouble in that second round if Gonzaga wins their first round game, which I'm sure they will. Looking at the Midwest here, Auburn, New Mexico State's a game that I don't see a lot of people talking about. I think it's maybe because Auburn's playing so well. They won the SEC tournament. They're red hot right now. I think you're going to see a bit up and down game, a lot of 3-pointers. I think with the way Auburn is playing, like I said, I don't think people are kind of keying in on this game for a possible upset. But how are you feeling about that New Mexico State Auburn matchup?
The one thing I do look at is, New Mexico State, they've been in the NCAA tournament with opportunities to pull off the upset in years past. And so I do think, maybe since they haven't done it yet, people are just jumping off the bandwagon. Similarly, kind of like no one's picking Virginia to the Final Four this year.
Right.
But I look at it, New Mexico State, they run 14 deep, I believe. Auburn's a deep team too. So that won't be as big of an issue as I think it would be. Say they get another team, maybe Kansas, as opposed to Auburn. I do like the Tigers to advance, but it's going to be a fun game to watch, and I don't see either team, blowing the other out.
Yeah, I think New Mexico State matches up very well with Auburn. They're both very athletic, so I think it's going to be a very competitive game. New Mexico State's been in the NCAA tournament like 7 out of the last 8 years, but I don't think they've won a game for a long time now. So we'll see what happens. The other game I wanted to mention, I think this is one game that's intriguing a lot of people. Obviously, is Wofford and Seton Hall. Wofford is just a complete basketball team. They're really good on both ends of the floor. Fantastic offensively, really good defensively. This isn't some mid-major team that just blows everybody out and scores a ton of points. They can really play defense too. But this Seton Hall team just has this kind of feel of a team that can make a run. Miles Powell's playing so well right now. They seem like they have other guys stepping up, each game. How do you feel about the Wofford-Seton Hall matchup?
That's a must-watch game for me. I'm going to make sure to tune into that one. Powell versus Fletcher McGee. Sorry, forgot his name for a second.
No problem.
That's going to be a fun matchup. McGee, all-time leading three-point shooter if he makes 3, I believe, in this game. If I remember that correctly, Miles Powell, he can pull up from the parking lot and he can hit threes. That could be, a fun guard matchup. But I do think with Wofford, they have other guys that can beat you. Nathan Hoover, Cam Jackson inside. That's a complete team. You don't really see that as much with Seton Hall. They have other players, but it's mostly Powell. So right. I would lean Wofford in that game. But it still should be a fun matchup. And, if you told me Seton Hall wins, I will not be shocked.
No, me neither. The way they're playing right now, they're a hot basketball team. They can definitely beat Wofford. It won't be easy. Give us another game in the Midwest that you like, Jonathan.
I like Kansas Northeastern. That should be a fun matchup. Northeastern shoots the 3 really well. Kansas, not a great 3-point defensive team. In Kansas, they haven't been that good this year. The streak obviously died. That's the big headline. Maybe they fall susceptible to a Northeastern 13-4 upset.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a possibility. I think Northeastern's a fantastic basketball team, very balanced. Vasa Pusica is one of the best guards in the country, and I think Kansas is just vulnerable this year. They just don't look like your usual Kansas team, so that wouldn't surprise me at all. Let's look at the South here. The one game I wanted to talk about, and that's another, it's a 3-14 matchup, is Purdue and Old Dominion. It's a kind of another game that I haven't heard much about regarding, an upset, but Old Dominion is an elite defensive team, and they have guards. And we know to advance in the NCAA tournament, you always need great guards, and they have that. They have some decent size up front to kind of match up with Purdue. So I'm really looking at this matchup. I think if Old Dominion can, kind of grind it out, they have a pretty decent chance to win. How do you feel about Purdue and Old Dominion?
I have Purdue advancing.
Okay.
Just because of that. But Purdue, you look at the past few weeks, they haven't looked any part of a 3 seed.
Yeah.
Carson Edwards, he's hit like a wall. I think he's probably just tired from being overused and shooting all the time. His efficiency numbers have obviously gone down. And so, if Old Dominion beats Purdue, they're capable of pulling that upset. So I wouldn't put past them.
Yeah, if I want to be honest, I think Purdue overachieved this year. I think that roster still isn't great, but Matt Painter did a fantastic job. I don't think they're a 3 seed talent level team. I just think that Matt Painter put together a great team, and they're playing good basketball. Again, they haven't looked the part the last few weeks, like you said. The other game, I think this is the main game in this region that everybody's excited about, and especially now that, Dean Wade looks like he's not going to play in the NCAA tournament, which is just very disappointing for Kansas State, is the UC Irvine-Kansas State matchup. Another defensive battle. This is going to be – UC Irvine hasn't lost since January 16th. This team is really, really good. They're really, really balanced. They play 9 guys. They all score. So they're a tough team to match up with. I still like Kansas State in this game. I think people get too caught up sometime in the upsets. This is a Big West team, as good as they are. Kansas State should still win this game, but I think it's going to be very competitive. How do you feel about that one?
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a competitive game. UC Irvine, if they were maybe seated where Liberty is and Liberty versus where K State is, I think everyone would be taking UC Irvine to beat Mississippi State. I still do think a lot of people are going to pick that upset, but I still like Kansas State in this one. They have the senior leading guards, Barry Brown, Kamal Stokes. Those are guys that have been there before, been there, done that. And even without Dean Wade, I still like them to advance, but it's not going to be a blowout by any means, probably low 60s, high 50s matchup.
Yeah, I agree with you. I still think Kansas State has enough firepower to get to the Sweet 16. If they're going to run into possibly a Wisconsin or who are they playing right now? Wisconsin plays, let's see, Oregon. So I think Kansas State can at least get to the Sweet 16 this year, even if Dean Wade doesn't suit up. So give us one more game in that region that you like.
Well, I'll go Wisconsin-Oregon there.
Yeah.
That's a good defensive battle. Kay Wooten was playing really well defensively in that Pac-12 tournament, kind of led them to the NCAA tournament. It'll be interesting to see what he can do down low against Ethan Happ. We'll see if Happ can have a big game. And then we'll also see, can Wisconsin's guards, if Happ isn't able to do something, like he usually does in that game, we'll see if their guards can step up and win them a tournament game. That's definitely something to watch.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's move on here to the next region. Second here, which is. Did we knock all the regions out, actually?
Yeah.
I think we did.
I think we got all the regions.
All right, so let's do some upset picks. Give me your three best chances for upsets in the first round.
In the first round, okay, I'll go really quickly. Belmont or Temple over Maryland. As mentioned, it always seems like we get a first four. I think every year we have gotten a first four team in the second round of the NCAA tournament. That should happen. And that's the place I look for it to happen. Yep. Elsewhere on the bracket, I do think Oregon could beat Wisconsin. That's a trendy upset pick. I think a lot of people will be picking that game. And then, obviously, Murray State over Marquette. Everyone's going to focus on John Morant versus Marcus Howard. If Morant can go off, I think that's an upset potential. And then one special one I'd like to add is maybe like the FBI fog, kind of catches up and with LSU and maybe Yale advances to the second round.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people pick Yale. Feel good about that game, definitely. Yeah, I'm with you on Oregon. They're going to be a tough matchup for Wisconsin because Oregon's kind of uber athletic and Wisconsin's kind of slow and grind it out type of team. So I like that one. I still think for me, I think UC Irvine's got a really good chance to win that game. I'm still picking Kansas State, but that one is a one for me. I also like St. Mary's. I think St. Mary's is playing some really good basketball right now. They just got that big win over Gonzaga. So I think they could maybe pull off an upset over Villanova. That's another one for me. And then I think another one to look at is Houston and Georgia State. That's a game that I don't think a lot of people are picking an upset in. Granted, obviously Houston is an excellent basketball team, but Georgia State's got DeMarcus Simons. If he can go off and score 25, 30 points, I think Georgia State has a possible chance in that game. It's going to be tough, but I think when you have a guy like Simons who's a high major player, I think you got a chance to win. Let's go to some.
The one thing going against Georgia State, I don't think Ron Hunter's going to have a chair to fall off of this year if there's a 3 hit to beat a 3 seed. So
I know. All right, so this is tough because I do a few brackets, but who do you like to come out of these regions? Who are your final 4 picks, Jonathan? Before we finish up.
So in the East region, I'm going to go with Duke over Michigan State. I just think they have the firepower, and the region's really easy up until that Elite Eight matchup. I think they should get by Michigan State if they match up in the Elite Eight and go to the Final Four.
Yep.
In the West region, that's a crazy region. It could go a lot of different ways. I'm sticking with Gonzaga, but if you told me like Florida State, Buffalo, Texas Tech even, were ended up being in the Final Four, I would not be surprised at all. Midwest region, this one I took a flyer. I always have a blow-up bracket, because there's always one in the NCAA tournament. I ended up with Iowa State over Auburn for the Final Four. They'll get to the Final Four, I think, at least, which probably will end up being wrong, knowing how my brackets do. And then the final one will be Virginia over Tennessee. That's also kind of like easy region. Virginia shouldn't sweat until that Elite Eight game, and that would be assuming they play Tennessee.
Yep. All right. And I'm going with Duke in the East. I think they have a pretty fairly, I wouldn't say easy path, but I think if they don't get to the Final Four, I think it will actually be pretty disappointing for the Blue Devils. As tough as the West is, I'm still going to go with Gonzaga. I think they're the best team in the country overall. So I'm going to have them get to Minneapolis. In the South, this was a tough one, but I'm going with Tennessee. They got clipped early in last season's tournament. They're all juniors and seniors, so I think they're going to find a way to get to Minneapolis out of the South region. And I'm actually with you in the Midwest. I picked Iowa State too. This is a team that I thought was going to finish top 3, top 4 in the Big 12 this year. I love their versatility. I think that they're a tough matchup for any team. So I'm going to go with Iowa State as well as kind of my dark horse pick. So I think that's a pretty good mix. I don't like to see chalk brackets, so I like to see teams like 6, 7 seeds get to the Final Four. We had South Carolina, recently as well. So it seems like it's going to be a lot of fun.
The one thing Iowa State has going for them, Midwest Regional is in Kansas City, and
right.
Big 12 tournament, that's basically, Fran calls it Hilton South. Could be Hilton South for the Midwest Regional, and that's always tough playing a basically road game.
Oh, definitely. They'll pack that place. It'll be like a home game almost for the Cyclones. Fairleigh Dickinson knocked off Prairie View. If you didn't see that, too, they kind of stunned them and came back in the second half. So looks like Temple and Belmont is gonna start here in just a few minutes. So we're gonna finish up here and go watch that game, I'm sure. Jonathon, thanks for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure and a good basketball conversation, about this bracket reveal. And if you can, I'd be glad to come on again.
Absolutely. You. So again, that's Jonathon Warriner from MakingTheMadness.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Bracketologist3. So I'm sure most of the viewers are familiar with him, but if you're not, give him a follow. So again, guys, I will be back hopefully in a couple, week or two, maybe to break down to see what happened with this NCAA tournament. I'll be on Periscope within a few days as well, hopefully. So enjoy the tournament and enjoy the games tonight. We'll talk to you later. Tony Patelis, College Shoot News Podcast.